It is finally here. As of yesterday, the Hermes Agent Desktop has been officially released by the new research team. And look, Hermes Agent has been such a huge game changer, at least in my AI ecosystem, right up there with Claude and GPT. But the one thing that I think that was holding it back from getting it into more people's hands and actually using it and benefiting from it was the terminal, this thing right here. It isn't always an easy proposition to make when you have something like Claude Code or Codex that's easy and usable right out of the box. But with this new official native app that's just launched, instead of having to remember the different commands to use an agent harness like Hermes, you can now easily get started and just click your way around to learn and tinker with Hermes Agent. Hermes Desktop is basically a visual terminal similar to something like Claude Code, which I think is huge for beginners looking to start. And for most people, that's probably the difference between using something like Hermes and using something like Claude Code, Claude Cowork, or even Codex. So in this video, I'll be going through how to get it installed, a quick tour of the interface, and my first impressions of where I think it's lacking, where it's doing great, and my honest thoughts so far. So let's jump right in. This is the landing page for where you can download the Hermes Desktop Agent app. The link will be in the description down below. And as you can see, it's already detected that I have a Windows operating system, which is pretty cool. And if you go down, here's that little video clip that they had in their X post, the different operating systems you can download it for. And yeah, just some features of the Hermes agent. Hermes has such a cool taste to it, and I think has one of the coolest aesthetics out of all the different AI tools that I've seen. So kudos to them for having taste. I really like this. With all these features, before I show you what the desktop actually looks like, we have to remember what the purpose of all this stuff is for. I'm making videos about AI, and sometimes I can get lost in the sauce too, but we have to remember what the point of all this stuff is for, right? So it has all these cool things. Why do we want to have an interface, and what do we need to use this for? So I want you to always keep that in the back of your mind. New things can always come out, but always be goal oriented and purpose driven, at least for this stuff, because the point of AI is to make our lives easier. So keep that in the back of your mind as I go through the interface of that desktop app, and really with any AI tool that you see in the future. So let's keep it moving. I want to make this UI walkthrough quick, but also useful. The first place to focus on is going to be the top right corner here. This little gear icon will take you to the settings. This has a lot of what you'll be tinkering with in Hermes from the different models, like you can see here. Super intuitive. You can click through, you can see what's available to the appearance, the different themes. I usually like the dark theme, but I think here I prefer the light minimalistic look, as well as some other options here on the left. Like for voice, I typically like to go with Grok. I think it's less robotic. To some of these other more advanced options, which I honestly don't think you need to change. Just leave it as it is unless you really need to change it. Here you can see I have Hermes running on my local gateway. I have it on my local PC, but if you had it on a VPS or maybe the computer, you can remote and access it that way. Here are the different LLM providers. This is where you can input in the different API keys you have. And so instead of typing in your API keys, which you shouldn't be doing, you can manually input them here without having to type it in a chat and send it to an LLM. In the about part, you can see that it's automatically searching for new updates, and it'll tell you whenever there's a new one that's ready. All right, the other piece here at the top right is the profiles section. So the manage profiles, which in Hermes is just another way of saying the different individual agents that you can create and spawn. I have a few here that I was able to transfer over. And if they don't show up for you, just ask Hermes in a new session about how to access the current agents you already have, and it'll get right to it. So it's super intuitive. Here you can manage the different MD files. You can change it up here, save it. You can see what model the current agent is running on, the skills that it has, to even deleting it. And so I think this is a much easier way of managing agents instead of having to know all the commands, which honestly, who's going to remember all of them? There's so many different commands. If you go to the top right, click on the sidebar here, you can see that you can even access to different file paths. So it's almost pretty comparable to VS Code, I think. It's getting there. This is super useful. I can dig into and see the different folder structures. And here you can even access your terminal if you click this icon to the top right here. So all in all, it's really starting to become comparable to these other IDEs like VS Code, right? You have access to your terminal. You have access to the different file paths and folder structures. It's really starting to become its own self-contained and independent system where you have everything you need. Now on the left-hand side, also pretty self-explanatory. You can start a new session here. Every session that you start will be based on the current profile you have selected. So if I had selected my creative lead agent, started a new session, that session will be talking to my creative lead agent. You can access the different skills and tools, which is super cool because you no longer have to go to a terminal or the dashboard to see this stuff. You can see how it has these different skills categorized. You can turn on, turn off, see what each individual skill you have that's being used. So it's not wasting tokens and it's not always being activated, especially if you don't need it. There's a lot of stuff on here I need to turn off. You can also access the different tool sets. The difference between a tool and a skill set is a skill is basically an MD file that are more like instructional guardrails versus tools, which are what the agents use. For example, if you wanted to scrape a page, there is a web search and scraping tool. Or if you wanted to query a database, you'll have a tool for that as well. So skills are kind of those guardrails and the instructions to use the tools, and the tools are the functions that the agents will call themselves. And these tool sets are just like bundles of those different tools that you can configure, turn on, and turn off. And I think one of the biggest upgrades is this messaging piece here, where you can now manage and configure the messaging channel that you want to be talking to your agent in a much more intuitive format. So I don't like using Telegram, I actually like using Slack. You need 2 tokens and, instead of having to paste them in the terminal, you have the entire setup here, and they even include the guide that you can click on. So if you wanted to see how you can set this up in Slack, it'll automatically take you to your Slack here. It's actually opened up my agents in Slack. They have Telegram, Discord, all this other stuff here that you can set up by clicking on it, which I think is huge because honestly, the average person does not need to be using the terminal. And I think eventually this is how it's going to be, because eventually all these different AI tools will have to accommodate to the lay person and make it accessible and not so complicated. And they're really taking a step forward here with the way they've designed and created this entire desktop app. So kudos to the new research team. And here you have the different artifacts, which is anytime you post any image, links, or files to your agent within the session, it'll keep track of it here. Sometimes I like to look back to see what image did I paste in to send to my agent. You can see all that stuff here, the different links, and also files that you've given to your agent. And as you go down this left sidebar, you can see that you can search through the different sessions you have. You can pin your different sessions by clicking these 3 dots here, or you can just right click it too. Or you can just right click it to unpin it. You can also export it or rename it if you wanted to organize your different sessions. One way I do it is probably rename that session to have the agent that I'm talking to in which that session belongs to. I like my chats and sessions organized by the different agents that I'm talking to, similar to Telegram and Slack, kind of like how I have it here. That is one thing I'd like for them to hopefully add, because I like things organized by agent, and then within each agent, I have the different kind of sessions, and in those sessions, I can dig in. Here on Slack, it's called threads, so I can see the exact chat for that session for that agent, which I think is pretty cool. This is why I like using Slack versus using something like Telegram. But overall, I think this is a huge improvement from what it was. And this bottom section here, you can access the gateway. You see mine disconnected, the logs. You can restart it, you can update it, you can refresh the system here. Down here, you can see all the different cron jobs that you have. You can pause, manage, trigger, and edit all of this stuff here. You can even create a new cron job with everything you need to fill out. And on the bottom right here, I like how you have easy access to the different models. You can change. I have Opus and all this other stuff down here. Right now I'm running on GPT 5.5 medium. And if you click into edit models, you can turn on and see which ones you have available. And if you wanted to add one, to click on add provider, other providers, and you can just set the different keys here. There are things that I still think are kind of clunky, like going through the different profiles. If I wanted to use my creative lead agent, I'd have to type in the command. And I do like interacting with my agents on Slack on my phone. And I would imagine that's probably going to be the next thing that they create is a mobile app. But for now, I'm still going to be using Slack for some of my things, mostly because of how it's organized. I like how I have it separated in Slack Though I would imagine eventually they'll also have that feature where you can have a more intuitive view of your different chats with your different agents. And I think that'll be when I fully switch. For now, I'll still tinker around with this. I think there'll be more things that I discover in the future. But overall, I think this is an amazing tool for beginners, especially if you've been on the fence about using Hermes. You're not super technical and you want to get into this stuff right away. Download this thing and start messing around with it. This is the age of agent harnesses, and there's no better time than now. So if you like the video, like the video. And if you want to see some more stuff like this, don't forget to follow. And let me know in the comment section down below how you're planning on using this.